Hi, so this is going to be a trial to see if the video works. If you're listening to this, it's probably because I don't have internet at the airport in Trondheim, and so we're going to do this via YouTube. Now, the course that you're about to study, interaction design and experience design, grew from the game design degree and the game design course that we had previously. Now, the reason why we're changing is to be more inclusive and to look at a wider range of experiences. So this is a new course for us. It's a collaboration between us and the computer science group and Ivan, who is down here somewhere, who is from the interaction design area. So let's have a look. So this is a new course. And this is a new course. We're looking at experiences, right? So a new course. And as applied computer scientists, when we take theory and we try and apply it in how humans experience what we make, right? So as game developers, of course, we're very interested in how people play our games. As web developers, we want to know that people can use our pages. As you saw in the introductory lecture, the idea of how do you buy tickets with NSB, how easy or difficult that is. What is the experience of buying those tickets? Now, understanding those experiences are about understanding people, right? So that's going to be a large part of what we talk about, is actually talking about how to communicate with other people, how to understand what people are doing, how to change what you do from people, those sort of things. As I said, these experiences could be games, they could be web pages. We could even look at using doors or those sort of things. So we'll just quickly introduce myself. I kind of said a little bit of this before, but I'm a New Zealander. I've worked both commercially and as an academic. I've been doing this sort of stuff for about 15 years, so quite a long time. I have an interest in medieval history. So if any of you are interested in siege weaponry, I've been building trebuchet over in Hammer for the last 6 years, and we're going down to Denmark. Trebuchet there. I also got to be an extra in Lord of the Rings, so at the beginning of the second movie, where they put two kids on a horse right away from a village. I'm one of the wild men burning down that village. Now, unfortunately, the other main lecturer in this course, Marish, is also not here. He's at a conference, and he's Polish background. You would have heard him speak at the introduction. And he spent many years in New Zealand and kind of describes himself as a hacker and a programmer, and he's a very good runner, and he likes climbing, and he likes quantified self and measuring things. He likes information security and networking. General purpose computer scientist with an interest in fitness and quantified self. And we both enjoy programming, right? Because somewhere deep inside us, we're actually also programmers. The other introduction is introducing Ivan. Now, he should be down here somewhere, I think, or that side. And I'll let him introduce himself now, and you can press pause on the YouTube. Okay, hopefully that was long enough for Ivan to introduce himself. So thank you, Ivan. You've done a great job, hopefully. And now we can move on to the background for the course. Now, we've designed this course in two parts. The first part is an introduction to design and what design is, design principles, how to work in a team, how to support a creative process, right? What kind of things you need to do to encourage creativity. Now, it's very hard to be creative on demand. right? So it's not like we're going to be able to tell you how to be creative, but we can talk about some of the process that creative people use. We can talk about it in the process of innovation and process of design. We then split into two parts where we'll have full-on game stuff, where we just talk about games and talk about game balancing and what's different about games and why people play games and psychological measures of playfulness and meaningful play. And then we'll go for the application track. We'll look at user experiences on websites, how you measure it, how you test it, being user-centered and user-focused and universal design, and so a bunch of other issues. Now, there are two textbooks. The game design textbook is by Jesse Schell. It is a book of lenses. Now, we're using the second edition. If you can't find the second edition, the first edition has most of the same stuff. You'll just have to find that the lens numbers are different. But there's all the lenses that were in the first edition are in the second edition. It's just there's some additional ones. And the other book we're using is Don't Make Me Think. Is that with games, we are interested in the experience itself, because you play the game not to complete a task. And if you're trying to buy tickets for an SB and the experience is really good, the experience doesn't have to be so good that you're gonna buy more than one ticket for the train, right? Just because, oh my God, that was amazingly wonderful to buy a ticket with the train, I think I'll buy 5 for myself. What it should be is that, oh, that was very good. I'm really pleased I got my ticket. It was really easy to use. Because the function is the key. With games, oh, I'm really happy I completed that game. There was a button I could press go, and a big red button, and it was win. I pressed the win button, and yay, I've won. Not quite what we're going for in game, right? We're not just trying to get to a functional endpoint. We're trying to build an experience, right? So games are really focused on making that experience the best it can be. Whereas for web applications, you try and make the experience to support a goal, an action, an activity, which is probably an external motivator in that activity, trying to buy a ticket on the website. So the course structure. So we have 4 projects, which is kind of 3.5. The first, we're going to change a simple part of a game. All of you will change a simple rule in the game to see how it changes the experience, right? Now, we could have tried to do this with a website, but it's easier to understand how a simple change in a game can affect how you experience that game. The second assignment, we're doing board games and paper prototypes, right? So you'll both be working on paper, building something, making some experience. In the third and fourth, we'll separate out the game people. Will make it and will design a game and make a digital game. The app people will prototype a web or application interaction and then test it on people. So you're not supposed to be able to read this. This is just me showing you that we actually do have a plan for the whole semester, and we are thinking about it and like dividing it into 2 tracks and stuff. But this is an agile course, which means we will change it based on your feedback, right? This is what we think we'll do. But if you give us feedback, if you say that we need to change it, we will change this, right? So this is not set in stone, which is why I'm not putting it out there in the first lecture saying, look, this is exactly what you'll do. And in the end of November, you'll be studying this particular piece of information, because we don't know that yet, because we've not run this course. So, what do we mean by experience? Well, experiences exist in humans, right? the experience of sitting here listening to me is an experience. Now, we don't really think of the computer as having an experience, right? Yes, it's certainly playing this video. It wouldn't really care if I was a cat video or a lecture or death metal or a snuff movie, right? It wouldn't matter to the computer. But our experiences of a cat video versus Simon talking randomly at you would be very different. So experiences are about humans. And that's true of games. We're interested in how people play. When we talk about websites, there is a small bit where we talk technically about how long it takes, well, even things like how long it takes to load the page. That's only really relevant to human beings, right? Because if I halve the time it takes to load a page from 0.001 of a second to 0.00005 of a second, the computer's spent half the length of time, right? So it's really improved for the computer. That's too short a time for humans to notice. So we're really only interested in the technical aspects, to some extent, as they affect the human experience of that page. So when we interact with the world, we have external experiences. We can also have internal experiences where we reflect ourselves on how we think, right? And what we're doing. And so my reflection on my knowledge, my reflection on what I've done, my sitting and thinking about things can create an internal experience independent of an external experience. And there's some amazing research on how internal experiences can affect external experiences. Certainly, expectation, what's going to happen, massive effect on how you feel about what happened, how you experience something. I'm going to try and bring in some Marmite in one of the tutorial sessions, and I'll get you to taste it. Now, if you think it's going to be sweet, it will surprise you. Now, that surprise changes the experience. So it's very important how you set up people, what you think they're going to have. So, for example, if you look at the Olympics, favourite who felt they were going to win, everybody expected them to win gold, a bronze medal. The experience is deflating. They feel they failed because because they expected to get gold. And yet a young kid who this is their first Olympics, they've never won anything at any other competition, getting a bronze is an amazing achievement. It's exactly the same external situation, but very different experience. So the experiences you have internally can affect the way you experience external things. We even know if you think about eating M&Ms and then you are allowed to freely eat M&Ms, you eat fewer of them because of that internal experience you've already had, right? So you can think of these as both being internal and external. Now, as a developer, you don't have much control over internal experiences of your player, right, or your user. Provide a framework. We can provide things, but the rest of it is brought by the player. So, what's your experience of lectures? Right? This is a YouTube lecture. This is a very weird, different lecture to give. Right? I am having a very different experience sitting here talking to a camera than I would sitting here talking to an audience of 70 people. You are having a very different experience. As a lecturer, I design the lecture experience. When I sit down and think, what am I going to have in this lecture? I'm not just thinking, how much content can I pack and transfer from my brain into your brain? Right? That's not what's going on. What I'm doing is I'm actually thinking about how you learn from what I say. I know that I've got to keep your attention, so I have to, at various points, give you breaks, put in the odd joke, Do something silly or funny or memorable, just so that you have this rise and flow, and up and down in the lecture experience. That I'm not just sitting here monotoning away at you, making you fall asleep, right? Because if you're sitting there falling asleep, I'm not getting to you, right? I'm not creating the great experience that I need you to have. Now, this could be any experience. The lecture is one. There's bands, there's stage design, websites, things, anything. All of these experiences, going to IKEA. One of the interesting things you'll see at a number of supermarkets is, when you look up at a supermarket, right? When you next go to a supermarket, look up and you'll see a bunch of pipe work, right? You'll see ventilation and you'll see metal work and you'll see the substructure of the building. Okay. Now, it's more expensive to have removed what you would normally have as a roof so you can see all of those pipes. Because if they have a normal roof, eat all of that space, and they actually have higher costs by showing you it. However, lots of studies have shown that when people go into a supermarket that has a nice clean ceiling that looks proper and you can't see all of that, they feel that it's more expensive. People's perception of their environment means that they have the experience of, oh, I'm saving money because I'm going to a place that hasn't spent all its money on ceiling insulation. Even though the reality is very different to their perception, right? So anytime we create an experience, we don't just look at objective reality, we have to understand the human. So these are all experiences that can be designed. Sometimes you'll hear people say there is no time when there isn't design. There's either good design or bad design. It's not that there's no design. Everything is designed. It might be very lazily designed, and people might not have cared about it. But there is design in that, even if the person doing it wasn't really paying much attention. Right? It's no design. It's lazy design. And we'll come back to that with in games when some things work by accident. Fine there, it's just accidental and lazy. So I was going to play this video. Oh, and now we've gone blurry because you can't see me. So if we just click on this was a short video.
See the devices that I'm using mainstream. They're not all standard. We have a playing device called a mouse, standard keyboard, and special keys that we have here.
This was a demonstration of the first mouse and keyboard. Now, when I was a kid, 30 years ago, I had a ZX Spectrum. Just like this. Right? When I was 10, 1984, I was given this as a birthday present, so I could learn to program. It doesn't have enough keys on it to have all of the programming keys, right? In fact, the space bar is that small key there, right? Not a long space bar here, but that was the keyboard. The experience of using that is very different to modern keyboards, right? And the experience of using the first mouse, very different. But this was the introduction of user experience, right? And so this was a guy talking a bit like this video with video stuff and stuff on screen, using the mouse and how to use the mouse. No, okay. So I don't need to click forward. I need to go to the next slide, right? Okay. Now, as I said, there are two tracks. The main difference between the two tracks. Wow, it's having troubles with the lighting, isn't it? the main difference between the two tracks is that the game track is going to focus on the experience of playing game, whereas the at track are going to focus on the experience of achieving a goal. Okay, so for the game track, it's going to be slightly different. Now, we have to also work out numbers, and we'll ask you over the next few days, next few weeks, what your thoughts are about what you're intending to do, how many numbers we've got, how much tutoring support we need, all those sort of things. So we're still adapting this, but we're getting in resources. We've got PhD students, other staff members, we've got international people who come in and talk for the Interaction Design Masters, and we're going to cross-sell them. We'll try and use them for you guys so that you get exposure to researchers in this area and the latest ideas that are happening. Right? So this is hopefully this will be a very enjoyable track as well as the game track. So what is a game? Okay, so the reason I thought I'd go into talk about games is because when you talk about experiences, it's very important to have language that you can share. But what I'll do is I'll actually end there and give you guys a break. Seeing we've been going for about half an hour. So you guys can have a break and come back and we'll start talking about what games are and how we understand them and how we communicate. Okay, so pause. Right, okay, we'll come back. Hopefully you've had a pause and see, I've got a coffee, so I'll have some. Okay, so what is a game? Games are not just about computer games, right? Games existed before computers, obviously. Right? Now, many things that children do, they turn into games, right? And you can turn almost any activity into a game. So children will play tag. They will race to see who can get something done the fastest. They will try and throw things further than other people. They'll try and run faster. They'll try and jump higher. They'll try and hold more of things. They'll try and lift heavier things. They will compete against each other. And they'll have rules. Right? Now, when play, just randomly playing, say you're playing with a ball, if you're just playing with a ball, that's playing with a ball. When I make rules around how I'm allowed to play, when I say how to win or what I expect you to do, those rules turn that play into a game. Okay? Now, you've played, most of you have played potentially all of these games. And if I asked you what's a game, you'd say, it's something you play. You'd think that it was relatively easy to define. The problem is that simple words like game often have complex descriptions, right? Because there are some things you want to say aren't games, but they're very hard to distinguish from things that are games, right? So you might say football's a game, obviously. But are people who are being paid to play football really playing a game, or are they doing their job? So have a quick turn to your neighbor and discuss, are professional sports people still playing games, or are they doing a job? Okay, pause. Okay, hopefully Ivan's got some feedback from that. You guys have had a discussion about games. Now, you can get even further. You can go, is war a game, right? Is politics a game? I mean, it certainly seems like Donald Trump seems to be playing a weird game. He's almost changed the rules, right? Often they talk about changing the rules of something to change the game. Change the game of politics. Now, when we start trying to define what a game is, we have to start thinking, okay, so when that discussion of when are professional sports players playing a game or are they doing a job, you start talking about things like consequences, like they earn money, right? If is earning money relationship, they are not necessarily voluntarily doing it. They also aren't just doing it for its own sake, for fun. They are doing it because they get paid to do this. So it becomes an interesting of what are the aspects of games. Okay, so what would we need to include things in the category of game and exclude them from other categories? Right? So normally I would take this in from the class. Right? So here I'm going to leave this blank and let you guys fill it in. So from me, I'm going to leave that blank and we're going to fill that in. Okay? Because if I give you all that stuff now, you guys won't talk about it. So what I want you to do is fill in all the things that you might need to know what that something is a game and when something isn't a game, right? So if you think of these are all experiences of games, these are things that aren't games. How do I make sure that all the things that are games are inside and all the things that aren't games are outside? I want you to think about other activities. What's the difference between a game and a story? Are all puzzles games and are all games puzzles? Or is there another relationship between puzzles and games? What's the difference between a toy and a game? How would you define something as a tool versus a game or a tool versus a toy? I have a hammer. I use it as a tool. My son picked up the hammer and started chasing his sister. A toy. I had to convince him that no, it's not a toy, it's a tool. It's a hammer. Right? It's dangerous. It's not designed to be played with. However, what about a toy hammer? It's a hammer, but it is designed to be played with. What about the toy hammers, the wooden hammers that you hit in wooden pegs with? It has a hammer function. It works just like a real hammer, but it's still a toy. So, talk to your neighbour. How would you make the distinction between tools and toys? Okay. So, play versus games. When are you just playing and when are you playing a game? Right? So, to think about that, and particularly in the relationship of these three, which is play versus sport versus work. Right? So when is something work? When is something play? And when is a game a sport? Right? Now, bizarrely, we've just been watching the Olympic Games, which are entirely made up of sports. Right? Now, bizarrely, at the Olympics, there used to be things like poetry. Right? Was an official Olympic event. That's not really a sport, that's more of a game. But now all of the Olympic sports are sports, but they're still called the Olympic Games. So what is the difference between a sport and a game? Or play and work? Okay, discuss. Pause. Okay. So hopefully you guys have been having a discussion about play and sports and games, and we can move on to some of the discussion on what a story is. Okay, so we generally think of a story as being an account, a narration of something. So we talk about narrative, and there's a study of narrative called narratology. Like biology is a study of biological organisms. narratology is the study of narrative. So it's an account or recital, either true or fictitious. So does the story have to be linear? Right? Because games are often non-linear. Experiences through websites. If you think of user stories, right? One of the things we'll talk about in the course is user stories, where when you're designing a site, what you do is you tell yourself a little story about how a user might experience this. Right? Now, those user stories are narrations. But at some point you might say, well, what if the user does this or does that? Then you'll have to have another narrative, right? Another. So do you make one? Do you make branching? What does a branching narrative look like? When does a story become a game? Okay. Hopefully someone's talked about interaction in that. Right? When you interact with something, in a game. Where the edges, heavy rain, heavy narrative story, almost just a story with a point and click kind of move to the next page, right? Because you interact with a book by turning pages. That's not really what we mean by a game experience, right? That's just doing the requirement to turn the page to get to the next bit of content. Okay, so a toy. Well, you could say in casual terms, it's just something to play with, right? A toy, it's just a toy. You could be much more specific and go for things like, an artifact or system of artifacts developed by rules with which a player may interact, right? So a toy could be governed by rules. You could have a toy which has these kind of things in it, right? Can a toy have a goal? If it has a goal, is it then a game? Sometimes when you're making a game, you actually make the toy, the thing that's fun to play with, first. Once you have something fun to play with, just like kids, you then make rules that make it a game. But if you don't have something fun to do as the core activity, the rest of the game is not going to be fun, right? Because the core of what you do isn't enjoyable. Puzzles. Puzzles have some special features. So, a baffling problem. There's a problem that needs to be solved. So puzzles are things that need to be solved. A test of your ingenuity, right? Is just mean, right? It's not a puzzle. It's right. But puzzles, like puzzle pieces for a picture, there is a correct answer, and you're looking for the correct answer. Crossword puzzles have a correct answer. It's not like you choose how you're going to answer, right? It's not a branching, role-playing, I'm going to solve it this way. No, there's a right answer. And you're looking for that right answer. And some games are puzzles, certainly, right? And I think you could claim all puzzles were games, though very basic games. So the problem is greater than the solution, right? So a special kind of game in which there is a single correct answer or set of answers or correct answers. All puzzles are games, right? Is the claim. Can you think of a puzzle that you wouldn't claim as a game? Go. Okay, hopefully no one actually, well, if someone found an answer, I haven't paused this long enough for you guys to debate it. Okay, so tools. Something used to perform an operation, an instrument. So tools are instrumental. You use them to achieve something. Now, for the web app track, you will be developing tools, right? So web pages you can think of as being a web page to buy a train ticket is a tool. It's a tool for purchasing tickets. You want the tool to be as enjoyable to use as possible. You want the tool to be as efficient as possible. But with tools, you are always thinking of the function. What is the user's objective in using this tool? Running a hammer, I'm looking at the user holding it, hitting things. I might rubberize the handle so that I don't get the jarring of just a straight metal handle. Looking at paintbrushes versus rollers. Different experience, different tool. Still trying to paint things, right? So sometimes your objectives can be the same, but you approach it in two different ways. They both had advantages and disadvantages, just like, say, a web page and an app might have, right? The app, much smaller screen, much fewer things you can do. You're also clicking with your big fingers on stuff. Whereas on the web, you expect people to have a mouse and keyboard and be able to type things in. Typing lots of stuff in on your phone is an annoying experience, right? So you want far more straight selections and drop downs on your phone, and you can do more typing on your computer. So these are different experiences, potentially different tools with the same functional objective. Okay, so when you think about these, you're thinking about the goal, right? Can these be things? So can you take a tool and turn it into a toy? My son chasing his sister with a hammer is an example of that. And you can certainly use hammer throwing as a game, axe throwing as a game. There's the hammer throw at the Olympics, right? So yes, you can take what was a tool and make it into a game. So when we design game experiences, what are the things we're interested in? Well, one of the things we're going to talk about when talking about designing games is the interactions, right? That's true for both the app track and the game track. The interactions a human has with the experience. Choices. This is important for both. In games, you balance the amount of choice a person has, right? They have no choice, then they're just trying to click through as fast as possible. They have too much choice, they're overwhelmed. So you're balancing choice. In an app, if you give somebody on a web page far too many choices that they have to scroll through or they have to interact with, and they have to make those choices, decrease the pleasure of the experience by overloading that. Okay. What is the feedback you give the person? Now, for games, the feedback often is score, or you have some of your health, you have slots in your inventory, you have a path through a global map, you have lots of feedback. In apps, when you do it, say, when you're doing a questionnaire online, so much better when it's saying, this is page 1 of 5, rather than just saying it's page 1. If I just say it's page 1, you have no idea how many pages it's going to be. And so you kind of go, I'm not sure I should start. Whereas if there's only 5. In fact, there's a long discussion online at the moment about listicles, where people give you like the top 10 reasons to do this, or the 10 most ugly women in the world, or the 10 prettiest African American men, or the 5 hardest things to find in a jacuzzi. Like whatever the list is, they give you listicles. They give you these numbers. And one of the attractions of lists is they're bounded. You know how many there are. So you know when you're going to finish. And that's a sign of progress through. Right? So the feedback you get is really important for the experience. When you click on things, the fact that it flashes at you to say you clicked it. When you selected something, that you start seeing it spinning. When you save something, you see it respond. It doesn't sit there going, oh, I don't know if I've saved or not. Right? That feedback to you is critical. Knowing what your objectives are for design. For games, we're interested in the rules that you have for the player and whether they can understand them. And the boundaries. Now, for other experiences, you're also interested more in the boundaries, right? And the ways of interacting and what the user expects to get from those interactions. Okay. So, going into rules. Now, we're going to actually do this on Friday. We're going to start playing with some rules, right? So I'm just going to go quickly through the common parts of games and start discussing rules and some aspects of games. So rules are common to all forms of games. Rules provide challenge. They define what is possible. They provide the framework for the game. In fact, you could say that if you change the rules, you change the game. Right? So a game is kind of defined by its rules rather than by what it looks like. So chess played with aliens versus Predator is still chess. Chess with aliens versus Simpson characters is still chess, just you've changed the look of it. Chess, where everything moves diagonal and nothing moves in straight lines, isn't chess anymore. It's a different game called checkers. Right? So rules, we changed the game. Okay. Boundaries, we think of boundaries as where the game ends. Right? This was very important in the early 20th century when they're talking about games, because they were thinking of things like boxing. When I punch you in the ring, you don't go to the police and sue me for assault, because for some reason, when we step inside that agreed space, we change the normal rules of society. We allow people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. Right? So there's this idea of that you enter the game space and some rules have changed. Some stay the same, others change. And so where that boundary is, and you see like one of the classic things for WWE wrestling is where they go outside the ring and fight, right? Because that's, oh my God, they're outside the ring. Because we have this concept that the game should happen in the ring. Right? In football, if somebody from outside trips up a player or grabs a player if they go off the edge, that's terrible, right? That's considered cheating because that's an influence from outside of the game on the game. Right? So you've got to be really you've got to understand how people play the boundaries. Now, when people are using your website or trying to perform an activity, understanding their boundaries, understanding where they see going outside of what they're trying to achieve, that's also quite important. Okay. Feedback, critical for everything, critical for all the interaction design, critical for all of the game stuff, is letting people know how far they've progressed. And how much more there is to do. I'm regularly irritated by websites when I don't know how much further there is to finish registration. I don't know how many pages of registration I have to do. I don't know how long it will take. And that irritates, I don't know if I've got the time to do this. And once I start putting time in, I know there's a timeout and I won't get that time back if it times out. So, right? I need more feedback. We at university are terrible at feedback, right? You guys are now here, right? You're supposed to study. Even tonight, you're supposed to go over what you've learned today, because in December, that'll help you in the exam. And then you'll find that out sometime in January. But really, an action happening in August where you get feedback in January that it was thumbs up, a good thing to do, That's such slow feedback. Right? It would be much better if you studied and then immediately got the benefit of that. Right? But that's hard to do. Right? It also might mean that you'd study, you'd learn it, you'd get a pass wee test, and you'd immediately forget it. Right? You'd have these spikes of knowing things. Right? We want you to integrate into the way you think what we're talking about. So, yeah, we're still going to try and give you more feedback by having assignments and by having projects and by moving you through lots of activities to give you that feedback. But we're still not great. Okay. What does the player or user do? Okay, so when you're developing something, both a game or an application, being user-centered. So what does the user do? What is the goal of the user, and what do they do to get it? Are they clicking on things? Are they writing things? Are they planning things? What is it that the user is doing? What are they trying to achieve? Think as a user, what do I need here? Now, one of the classic things is you look at the homepage of a university, and it usually has lots of corporate information on it that nobody cares about, right? Because the people designing the page were the administration, who think all of the stuff about them is critical. What most people actually want to know is they want to know things like where the university is. They want to know what kind of courses it has. They want to know how much it costs if you're in the US. They want to know who studied there, right? They want to know what they could do after they finish, right? The whole bunch of stuff which isn't on the front page, because the people designing it weren't thinking from a user perspective. They're thinking from a corporate perspective. And this is where we talk about interactions, right? So one of the big themes that you'll follow in the Don't Make Me Think is around how we interact with things, right? What are the possible actions I can take, right? So with a door, and that kind of door, you can see there's a handle and a push bar. Now, astoundingly, over in the B building, when you go into the B building, which we're not going in today, but if you had, you would notice that you push by grabbing a handle and pushing. And you can't actually get out on the other side because you're supposed to be able to pull that door in, but there's nothing there. So it directs you out through one of the other doors. So it's a weird way of doing it, right? But they partly did that to force people who were coming in to use one door and the people going out to use the other door. Even though they both swing both ways doors, they're trying to force you to have an indoor and an outdoor without actually putting labels on them, just by the handles that they provide you with. Now, the natural interaction for something is called an affordance. An affordance is where we know that when human beings look at something, they'll look for familiar patterns, right? Now, I've got a coffee cup with no handle. So how do I pick it up? I have to pick up the whole thing. If I have a handle, I know that I should be able to pick it up by that handle, right? That is kind of, I can see my fingers would go in there and I can pick it up. If you've ever used an English teacup where you can't actually get your fingers through the tiny little hole that it has, you have to kind of pincer it like this and kind of go and get your finger out, just try and keep your hand balanced and sip by holding the thing like that. It's terrible, right? And it doesn't work the way you might expect it to work, which is a handle you can put your fingers into. So we have this term affordance, and affordance is used in a lot of places. It's used to talk about what the instinctual actions on an object might be. Now, on web pages, if something is blue and underlined, you should probably be able to click on it. If you can't click on it, you've broken the affordance of the web, which is blue and underlined is a link. Right? If you just have blue underlined text just in your writing, you're being a dick, right? You're just doing it wrong. So you need to be aware of what people expect of interactions. Okay. So what I want is think about experiences that you're having. Think about the lectures that you're having, thinking about going to parties, thinking about getting your ID card, think about experiences. Think about when they've worked really smoothly and when they've broken and they've worked badly. Think about who was it that might have designed this experience. Who was the person who actually said that it was going to be like this or like that? Identify some of them and think about how you would improve it. Because this is what we're going to discuss on Friday. Is this an improvement just for you or for all people? Right? So sometimes I'm annoyed by things, right? And I would like them to be like this. And then I think about it for a while, and I'm probably the only person who actually wants it like that. I understand that most people, they probably want the simpler option, or they want the non-configurable option where I want to be able to hack away at things and change them and get into the details. Whereas most people just want it to work. Right? Apple versus Android. Right? Often people get Apples and iPhones because they just work. Right? They don't have to think about it. I want to configure things. I want to have access. So what's the right experience for me? Or about people in general. So write these down, and we're going to talk about them in the presentation on Friday morning. Okay. So, and that was the end of my slides for today. I have no idea whether this video has worked. I'm hoping that it has, because I've just spent an hour talking. Hopefully this should actually probably take up about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, with all those pauses I put in. So think about experience. Think about all the experiences you're having. Think about when things work well and think about when they break. And we'll see you to discuss designing and improving experiences on Friday. Thank you.